Hey guys, it's Jay Tahoe here, and the topic of today's video is going to be the ridiculous cope argument. So let me just preface by saying that, once again, this video is intended for people who are kind of on the fence and not sure if they're ready to swallow this hardcore genetic determinism, black-pilled, fatalistic view. The people who are already in those dogmatic views, I already realized, listen, I'm not changing anybody's mind. You're not changing my mind. Let's just let it go. So this is for the people who are kind of on the fence and, want to hear both sides of the coin. All right, so let's talk about, the term cope. It is a term that gets spammed all the time in this community. And what they're trying to say is, oh, you're lying to yourself. You're denying the truth, to make yourself feel better. Okay, like that, yeah, I guess that is the definition of cope, is something that helps you, get through a difficult situation. Like, people use alcohol to cope, people use drugs to cope, people cope in a lot of different ways. However, why I think this is a particularly weak argument is you'll come at somebody with a fact or a study, you can back with empirical data. For example, right, I talked about, the myth of the black pillars. A common black pill belief is that women settle down with less good-looking guys in their 30s because they want financial security, and they'll lower their standard, because there's a wall, and they just want somebody to take care of them. Now, meanwhile, Face and LMS has said himself, right, that like, women don't really need a guy to take care of them because they have jobs and their own money now. But you can look up plenty of scientific peer-reviewed studies that show that female peak sex drive occurs in their mid-30s through 40s. So that actually explains, it's not like they're getting into relationships with these guys that they're not attracted to. It's that their sex drive increases in their 30s and 40s. So they're probably, the standard, for what they find attractive goes down as they, become more inclined to snuggle. But again, like, if you were to present something like that, right, any of those peer-reviewed articles to a hardcore dogmatic black pillar, he's going to say, you're coping. So what that is it's a blanket statement to try to get you to buy into their framework. This is what sneaky snake in the grass politicians do. This is what people like Jim Jones do to get people to join a cult. It's they trap you into this frame of belief. This is actually, ironically, it's sort of like what red pill coaches tell you to do to get somebody into your frame. Because once they have that, they know they have you, right? There's no escape. You can't think outside the box. Anything you present against that point of view is now coping. So I hope you guys can see that for what it is, and how it's like, when somebody says cope, to me, all I hear is, I don't have a good argument to refute what you're saying. And it's ironic too, because like Inkwell TV, he'll say, oh, the normies, such as myself, a normie, never present empirical data and science. And that's like, okay, like, I think, like, yeah, everybody has anecdotes, right? Like, we all have plenty of anecdotes throughout our lives that we can share. Plenty of friends that we've seen. You guys want to talk empirical data, that's fine. But you'll present a study from Scientific American and plenty of studies that back it up, right? You can find tons of studies that one of the prime factors in human mate selection is opposing immune systems, which is conveyed through natural body musk, which is a factor you don't have online on Tinder. And you'll have guys like Inkwell TV saying, oh, Tinder is real life, even though there's not that same variables there. But when you present this data to him, he'll go, you're coping, because he doesn't have a good response to it. I mean, there's plenty of I'm going to do more in-depth videos on the science behind some of these things. It's also sad that a lot of these guys, they're not gonna see the nuance to it. So I get a lot of hate because everybody's like, you're denying the truth. You deny that looks are important, bro. I never said that. I've actually said that looks actually are important. In my model, I've once again said that they're probably, and it differs from person to person, but they're probably about 40% of the equation from what I've observed, from what I have in my own observations. Here's the thing, right? In science, if I throw an apple out the window 100 times, or if I throw an apple out the window 1,000,000,000,000 times, I am 100% confident that it will hit the ground 100 times. Out of the first 100, it will hit it the next trillion times. It will hit the ground 100% of the time. It will never not fall. And that's why I accept that as a scientific law. Fair. How could you not? At that point, now all I would need is for the apple to not fall one time for me to, start to, question if gravity existed, right? Just one. That's all it takes to cast doubt. Now you take something like the black pill, right? And they run these experiments. There will be variation. You can say, okay, well, like Chad fishing has a pretty high percent of of Chad slaying on Tinder, and I'm not arguing that. But the problem is when you go out in real life, you see a ton of varied results, right? You see average. If you want to get empirical, average looking dudes reproduce all the time, right? That's the metric we're going by. So what you need to consider is, okay, maybe the experiment was flawed. Well, you certainly can't accept anything as a law because there's too much exception, there's too much variation. And as I have addressed in a previous video, the term outlier is used entirely incorrectly in this community. But once again, I'll reiterate, an outlier occurs, bottom 2%, top 2%. So again, somebody who can run, a mile in under 4 minutes and 30 seconds, that's an outlier. When you see this quote unquote oofy doofy phenomenon, right? These average, even like sort of below average, like chubby looking dudes, who have a girlfriend, out in public, you see that you can't go to the mall without seeing that. And you can't deny that, right? So go out and do observations and you'll see that all the time. Now, can you conclude that it's quote unquote beta bucks? I mean, yes, okay, look, I've known people who were being used for money. And I think it's up to you to be introspective and know when you're in that situation and if something's a raw deal for you, to leave it. Okay, I do think you should be aware that there are people who are out there to be predatory and take advantage of you. That's where I actually do agree with them on a lot of things. What I don't agree with, is if you aren't good looking, you're definitely being used for your money. I've seen plenty of couples where it's just this average looking dude who is actually completely taking advantage of the girl financially. So, a lot of that stuff, you wouldn't be able to explain that with your worldview. And again, fine, that's an anecdote. But again, like, there are plenty of studies that I can present that show that that's not always the case. I doubt that's even the case the majority of the time. But again, it's once again, it's on an individual level, and you need to be introspective. And so what my fear, what I think is harmful about people like Face and LMS and Inkwell TV and numerous others is that I agree that there are men who need to hear that their looks are the issue. Okay, there, I said it. I said it on camera, and I own it. There are men who need to hear that looks are their issue in life. Fair enough. What I see in this community is it's a bunch of average-looking dudes blaming their looks, and justifying, using that to not try in life and just essentially LDAR, lay down and rot, right? And if you want to do that, that's fine. That's your decision. You have every right to do that. If you've done the calculus and think that, hey, it's just not worth trying, man, you go right ahead and you do that. I'm not here to personally try to convince you. However, that being said, what I think will happen is a lot of guys, who are actually okay, who are actually pretty average, see this stuff and, it gets dogmatic and it's almost like a cult. And then they get in this mindset of, everything's futile, I shouldn't try. When actually, in reality, their genetics were fine. They were just average. They could have tried, right? They could have gone to the gym and, whether that gets you a woman or not, it's probably a good thing to one, be stronger and be able to defend yourself, and two, be healthy and be in good shape, right? Yeah, okay, yes, I'm a little overweight. I know I'm one to talk. Athletically, I guess for a fat guy, I can bang out 50 push-ups in one sitting. I can do 10 pull-ups, I can bench press 250 pounds. I did recently, so I guess, whatever, a little above average, I guess. But the point being is that, an average person could do that stuff, and it would, yield probably more benefit to their life, but they, find this stuff and bow out of the competition altogether. So in a way, I see that as a way of gaslighting normal people out of the race. And it's probably, if I had to guess, it's motivated by, a sense of like, hey, well, if I can't have anything nice, nobody else should. So we're going to spread, this deterministic, nihilistic worldview to just get people to drop out of the race. And once again, to reiterate, there are people who need to hear that it is the looks that are the issue. If you are 5'3", you are a 3 out of 10. Yes, it is 100% your looks that are the issue. However, that scenario is an outlier in itself. Most people aren't in that scenario. Most people are average. So, that being said, I do think that we should be honest with those men. I don't think we should gaslight them and tell them, no, it's not your looks. It's all, you just need to have good game and this and that. But again, like these average, it's mostly average people that I see. You guys want to know something funny? Is Inkwell TV in his last video said, beauty is not in the eye of the beholder. There's an objective standard for looks. Which again, grain of truth. I do agree things like a good jawline and hunter eyes and not having eyelid exposure and da-da-da-da-da, you can rattle off a whole list, are generally seen as universally attractive. That being said, my own experience in this community has pretty much proven to me that a sense of subjectivity exists, because I have shown my face on camera many times. I've shown pictures to people and asked 5 different people, get 5 different responses. I've had people tell me I'm as low as a 3, and some people were like, well, you're kind of like a Chad Light. If you lost weight, you'd be like a 7. Or I showed them like a picture of myself when I was younger. And, I did have a better jawline when I was younger because, I'm overweight now. But they were like, yeah, you were like a 7 then. And other people like, no, you're a 3, man. You're just coping. So, and Coach Blackpill rated me a 4. And that's fine. Listen, I'm here on camera. I don't really care what my rating is. My my life has been just fine independent of it. I don't really that was explorative. I also wanted to see what he would say, so that when I come on and be like, oh yeah, well, I haven't really had problems based on my looks. It was a good blind experiment there. I don't really know. Maybe if I had to rate myself, maybe like 5.5. It's really irrelevant anyway, because like, again, the results are what they are. But anyway, that pretty much, and that should show you guys, I challenge you guys to do the same thing, right? Ask just 10 random people in the community, because it's not women, so they're not, you can't say virtue signaling, right? It's other men who are black-pilled. And don't do it at the same time. Ask 10 different people, right? And ask them to give you a rating. I bet you're going to get varied results. Sometimes not even within one standard deviation of each other. I think we can agree, right, that like a 5 out of 10 is like the dead center of the bell curve, and one standard deviation is about 1 point in quote-unquote PSL. So like if you're like a 6 out of 10, you're like a standard deviation above the mean. If you're like a 7 out of 10, you're almost a Chad, right? So you're nearing that second standard deviation where you're in that top percentage of the data. If you're an 8 or above, you're in the top 2%. Whereas the same thing, right? If you're like a 4, you're pretty much a standard deviation below the mean. If you're like a 3, that's when you're noticeably ugly, right? In a room. That's where you really start to stand out, because you're now 2 standard deviations below average. And if you're like a 1 or 2, that's as rare as like a guy who's like a Hollywood actor model tier, 9 out of 10, right? Like that, it hardly exists in real life, if we're being honest. Again, go to your local mall, go to a restaurant, go to, a local venue. You're not really going to see dudes who are 1s and 2s, and you're not going to see dudes who are 9s and 10s. You're going to pretty much see, most people are between 4 and 6, and there's some subjectivity, right? So if you're one person's 4, another person sees you as a 5. One person might even see you as a 6, all right? I'm not going to be delusional and say if you're a 3, somebody sees you as a 7. Probably not. But again, there is subjectivity to it, and you can replicate this if you do a blind experiment in this community. In fact, get a bigger sample size. Ask 20 people and see, and take your average and see and add up the average, right? Divide by the total number of take all your ratings, divide it by the number of participants, and see where you end up. And I bet you get some good variation in there because there is a degree of subjectivity. But people like Inkwell TV are delusional and don't acknowledge that it exists. And they'll just say you're coping. So that's the end of today's video, but I just wanted to call this out for what it is. It's gaslighting. It's a blanket statement. And when somebody says it to you, don't buy into that framework and, challenge them with actual facts. All right. Bye, guys. I'll see you in the next video.